It's time to lock the doors and turn out the lights. You're listening to Tales of the Unknown.
Welcome to Fright Night. Finally convinced I'm not a vampire, are you? Right.
Back, spawn of Satan!
This is Tales of the Unknown. I'm Doc.
I'm White, bro.
And tonight, we have the legendary Tom Holland. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Yay!
Thank you very much, fellas.
As we said when you first called, you know, this is a true honor and a privilege. You are one of the true legends. I mean, come on, Child's Play, Fright Night. We could spend the entire hour just listing off your filmography.
Oh, I'm embarrassed.
So that is like to get things started here. That's what I'd like to know. What actually influenced you? Because we know you started out as an actor. What influenced you to go on and become a director?
My time of becoming aware, I guess, was the 70s, and I started to want. I wanted to direct when I was acting. I just didn't know how to get there for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, and you were acting for a while before you did direct your first feature, correct?
Yeah, well, for years, as a matter of fact. But what happened was I think I was in so many scene study classes, and, you know, I also did soap operas for a long time out of New York City, and I'd done a lot of film. I worked a lot as an actor. And what happened was I would start looking at how directors block scenes, and I would think to myself, well, no, it would be better if the actor walked over there and if the moment were played here. And I started in my head criticizing what other directors were doing. And I can't tell you why, but I always had confidence that I was always able to put plays on their feet and make them work. I was in the actor's studio, and they had something called the New Playwrights Unit. And I ended up directing one-act plays there with the actors, with other actors. I was in the studio as an actor, but I ended up doing small theater, basically, and, you know, do a one-act play every couple of weeks. And so I knew that I could do it, and if I could figure out how to make it how to shoot the camera, how to make the camera work with it, I thought that I could do drama. So it gave me confidence. And then I found out that it was extremely hard to get a chance to direct in Hollywood, and everybody around me who was getting that opportunity was basically writing. So I started writing, and that took me about 5 years before I started to sell. And because I became successful as a screenwriter, I was eventually able to leverage myself into directing. But it all started with acting.
Right, because, I mean, you were acting as early as 1958, but one of the people I have to ask you about, what was it like to work with Bob Hope?
No, I think that's somebody else you're thinking of. But I was there at the very beginning. I've been a member of SAG since 1961.
Okay, no, your IMDb has a 1958 TV series listed.
Boy, I don't know what that would be because I was still a kid.
It was called Telephone Time. Trailblazer?
No, don't know it. I don't know where that came from.
Strange. Yeah, no, I apologize for that. But yeah, it also says here that in 1964, would that have been you?
Yeah, that would have been me.
That was the Bob Hope's Chrysler Theater TV series.
Oh, that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yes, but I never met Bob Hope. That was a big show that I did. I think I think it's called Bus Riley's Back in Town, and that that was the Chrysler Theater was a big prestige show back in the early mid '60s, I guess.
Yeah, it was actually one of the last major anthology-style series on network TV. Right.
They did very high-end drama. I mean, that cast was, oh, my God, it was Michael. Oh, God, no, it's all in my head now. Anyway, it was a hell of a cast. It was Frank Corsaro that directed from New York City, and he was backed up by Sidney Pollack. And Sidney Pollack went on to be a huge director out of Africa and all that stuff. It was Anne Bancroft. It was Michael, the boy. He played the boy then, who now is a great character actor.
Michael Constantine.
No. Michael something else.
Okay.
I should punch it up here.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to find the other Michaels for you to help you out here.
Right.
I'm going down the full cast of the show.
It's the Michael that's been in the Tarantino films.
Okay.
That Tarantino uses now as an older character actor.
Oh, Michael Saracen.
Michael what? No,
Saracen?
Michael Saracen's gone. He's a Canadian, though, or was a Canadian. Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, yes, that was me. And what was happening was I was coming out from New York with a regularity to come out here and test or do television shows, because television was out here then, and eventually my wife and I stayed. And that's how I came out from New York to L.A.
So, I mean, you were a part of TV when it was at its truly golden greatest years.
What I got, Doc, was the end of the classical film period. I was under contract to Warner Brothers on a 7-year contract, and I was one of the very last contract players. And that really was it's the same year that JFK was assassinated, so I guess that's 62 or 63, I think.
So that's, I mean, you had an extremely storied career.
Oh, well, they still had the set standing on the soundstage at Warner Brothers for the Ascot race with My Fair Lady. And they had a standing set out in the back lot that was from Camelot, the musical, which they had just filmed. And so you still had contract players, and the studios were still doing big movies, but they were more and more dependent on television. And it was like the last gasp of the production system, of making films and television.
All right, cool. I've got myself one more question, and then I'm going to leave it to Wayne and the boys so that everybody can get theirs in. The main one I got to know is I'm a lifelong fan, got it from my mother. What was it like working on Stephen King's The Langoliers?
That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun because we did it in Stephen's hometown, Bangor, Maine. And it was a very difficult production, because the story is supposed to happen in a deserted airport. And in truth, it was the height of the summer season. But I had Stephen coming down. He'd get on his motorcycle and ride down from his house where he'd been writing. He does a bit part in it. He does some stunt casting. And, I got a chance to hang with him a little bit, and get to know him a little bit. And that was very, very nice. And Bangor in Maine, by the way, that was like August, September. It's a beautiful place to be during those 2 summer months.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the list just goes on and on here. You had a chance to act in the Incredible Hulk TV series.
I was the lead in 1977 or 78. I was the lead heavy. And I knew Bill Bixby for years anyway as an actor. I was friendly with him. He was a very, very nice man, and that was a lot of fun to do. Who knew that they would go on to make movies out of all those comic book characters?
Oh yeah, that's kind of exploded, and one of my favorite things, because as a kid I always collected comic books, and I dreamt of the day that I could see them transferred from paper to film, and that's been so wonderful to have happen.
Well, it certainly has, and television with the Incredible Hulk was the very beginning of it, a little before its time.
Loved it.
Oh, the Incredible Hulk was great. Lou Ferrigno. Then you went on and they had some television movies of the Incredible Hulk.
That's right.
They've just gone so far into that industry, really.
Oh, it did. It did. It was a great show.
Always a wonderful show. And you also got to work on, besides the Langoliers, you were part of The Stand as well.
Yeah, I went out. that was Mick Garris who wrote and directed, adapted and directed. And Mick had a number of us come out, of the horror directors. John Landis did a bit. I did a bit. I can't remember who else was there, but a number of us were threaded in with that. And that was a lot of fun, too. That was a good miniseries, I thought. I thought Langoliers was good, too.
I loved it.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. As a fan that read the book, The Stand was just amazing. It was one of the best adaptations of his books I've seen on film.
Well, The Stand probably is... because I read it as a young man. The Stand was like, it's probably in my mind anyway, the best thing that Stephen's ever done. But that's probably because it had
especially with all his tie-ins to the Dark Tower series throughout that whole book.
The whole thing, yeah. But I mean that was the first. That was just that really made him. You knew he was a genius when you read that.
You mentioned Mick Garris. You got to work with him on one of the episodes, The Masters of Horror. You did We All Scream for Ice Cream, which I think is one of my favorites that I've seen so far.
Oh, thank you very much. I met Mick first. I went and did an Amazing Stories for Steven Spielberg. It starred Jonathan Cryer. And Mick was on the writing staff, I think. And that would have been 85 or 6, I guess. And that's the first time, it seems to me the first time I met Mick. Mick also ended up doing the fourth episode of Psycho 4, I think. I think he did it as a TV movie. So I've been running into Mick for years, and he's a good friend and a very, very nice man.
And how was it to do the movie, having a piece of Psycho 2? Like I said before, I was kind of curious because a lot of people didn't think it would actually work out well, but you seem to have got a hold of it and went right to town on it. Because I thought it was awesome.
Thank you. That's the film that made me, really, as a writer. Everybody in town was terrified to take that on, because the assumption was all the critics were going to kill you for having the temerity to try to do a sequel to, by that time was considered, the brilliant movie, Psycho. And by the way, Psycho is what started modern horror. But everybody thought that it was a career-ending job. So I don't know if I've ever worked harder on a script in my life, and I worked with a guy who was a great director. He's no longer with us, an Australian named Richard Franklin. And Richard was a Psycho scholar. He had met Mr. Hitchcock when he was at USC. And so Richard and I ran every film that Hitchcock ever made, starting with the silent films. And we were picking out the visual set pieces. In other words, we were steeped in Hitchcock before we took a crack at before I started to write Psycho 2. In other words, we worked very hard to be faithful to the original, but also to the Hitchcockian visual style. And yes. I think all that paid off. I'm actually very proud of Psycho 2. I think it's a terrific movie.
Yes, totally. The car rides. The car rides are awesome. The car rides with the music playing, it's just perfect. It's total Hitchcock, because she's at despair and she's going to one place to another. It's just awesome, man. I mean, it's just the way you did it. It was just classic.
It really is based on all the given circumstances of the first. I mean, in other words, it's as faithful a sequel as you could possibly get.
Yes, totally. Another one is, it's funny, a lot of people probably don't know this, but you actually started out going a different route in your early days. You were actually going to go, legal? Was it?
Oh God, yeah. Well, no. What happened was before I came back to it, I got tired of acting, and I went back to college, and I graduated, and I didn't know what to do. And by that time, I was working production and television commercials. I was working behind the camera and in front of the camera, which is to say I was getting a very good education in the practicality of filmmaking, even though they were short, 15, 30, 60-second spots. But I learned a lot, but I was putting myself through school. And there was that moment when I didn't know what to do. And with my life, my career, all those things you go through when you're, well, by then I think I was older. I was like 27, 28, 26, something like that. So I applied for law school and got in. But it was a holding pattern, if that makes any sense. And then after the end of the first year of law school, I realized I'd made a terrible mistake, and I started to write. So, there's all these twists and turns that one goes through as one grows up, or whatever the word is.
Yes, part of life itself. We find out where we want to go sometimes ain't always.
Well, you hit the panic button a few times in the way,
It's a journey.
Well, it's that old question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
How do you answer that?
It's kind of a tough one to answer.
I don't think when you grow up.
The film industry, whatever, it's not film anymore, it's video. But it's always been very, very difficult to get into. And people will ask me, well, how do I become an actor, writer, or director? And there is no answer. Everybody has to find their own way. And I think when I look back on my life, it had a lot of stumbles and side turns and periods of wandering around. And law school was one of those periods.
Where do you see cinema at today, or where it's headed today? Do you think we're going to see some good upcoming stuff coming out, or is it changing more commercial?
Oh boy, Doc, that's a big question. The way it is right now, there is a huge shift going on from cable, which means television as we've always thought of it. It's going online. It's going, it's going over the internet. And so I think that it's like the Wild West out here in some ways. You see all kinds of internet channels now coming up, which are subscription channels basically. I guess a few like some of the opening levels to Hulu for their television video. You have to watch advertisements. But I think what you're seeing is the journey of filmed of scripted entertainment going online, and a lot of that is, I don't know what's going on up there in Ontario, but the cable bills have become so onerous and so expensive to people, and there are so many channels that they don't watch. Cable television itself is under threat.
If you're not careful, you could have a $200 cable bill here in Ontario.
With an eye blink, right?
Well, that's just like that. That doesn't matter if you go through Eastlink, Rogers. If you're not careful with the channel packages you order, you could end up with a $200 a month bill easy.
Well, it's happening to me too, because not only do I have cable, I also subscribe to Spotify. I've got Netflix. I've got Amazon Prime. So what's going on is there's a war out there for eyeballs, and at the same time, I believe ad rates are falling. So that means it in some ways, at least, it's generating less money for the creators, and so it's a very delicate time, I think, for the business. It's hard to say exactly what's going on because all of this is going on, and at the same time, movies, as you well know, from the majors, have become these huge international blockbusters that are costing $100 million and up, and they're very visual and very dependent on CGI, and they're not making original screenplays anymore. I was very lucky when I came in because they were open to original screenplays. They needed them, but it's very, very difficult now in a time when everything is a brand already. It's a sequel or a remake, or it's a tentpole. It's very hard in terms of what we think of as film, the big theater experience, to get any new content in there. At the same time, scripted content on what we would have called television seems to be growing. or seems to be at least healthy. But I don't know what's going to happen with the falling ad rates, which is really what supports production in this business. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I know that one of my favorite things about the creation of all these internet channels is the opportunity for independent filmmakers to now get their stuff out there and get it seen on a wider basis.
Okay. Distribution, which is what you're talking about, has become frictionless, which is to say anybody can make anything and put it out on the web, and they can get people can watch it if they will. So
Yes.
what's happened is, yes, what you're saying is correct, but marketing, getting people to watch it, is as difficult, if not more difficult, than it has been, because at the same time that your captive audience has shattered and gone online, the noise online, the various things competing for your attention online has become more and more, it just proliferated. There's just so much. What do you watch? I mean, everybody's fighting for filters now, I guess is another way of saying it. It's why social media, I think, has become so important as a way of marketing. But this is, it's not easier. It's harder than it was.
Right.
Because the question about online, and you guys are doing a podcast, so you know this better than I do, but it's how to monetize it. With the podcast, I think mainly you're looking for sponsorship, right?
Yeah, for those that try to make money off it, yeah, it's through sponsors that you'd have to do it. Sponsored ads,
Yeah,
more on your website than anything. And then
Okay.
obviously like shout outs and that during your podcast.
Okay. Well, look at how podcasts are growing, for that matter, and that's because you can get it out there.
Exactly,
Go ahead.
as I like to say, video might have killed the radio star, but reality TV is bringing us back.
Okay, well that's a good way of looking at it. But you have to get people to listen to you.
Yes,
Right.
and it's so hard with there's got to be Shoutcast alone. I think has something like 100,000 stations now that anybody can listen to for free. So it's very hard to get listeners.
Well, and at one point in time, you had the ease of Facebook. You could pretty much reach a lot of people, really easily. And they've changed that now to where you're having to pay to get likes, pay for people to see your stuff. So they're cornering that side of it already so they can make money off of it.
Well, I know about that because I have Tom Holland's Terror Time, and I have the Terror Time webpage, and that's how I got into all this, and probably why I'm talking to you. I didn't realize any of these things. I'm learning now, Wayne and Pedro. Yes, I understand the problem. Yes, all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but you have to pay for advertising to extend your reach on Facebook. And there are now other, Twitter's coming in, Instagram. I don't know how to use all of them, but those seem to be developing into your new sales techniques, the new ways you have to use to let people know you're there. Is that right?
Right, yes.
It's definitely, it's almost like an ADHD style of marketing now. You got to hit it hard, fast, and keep it going.
Well, there you go. Well, what happened with Terror Time, with Tom, I put my own name, Tom Holland's Terror Time, but I did it because I put it up because all the younger guys around me were using it like crazy. Other younger directors, I mean. Adam Green, I go to dinner with Darren Bousman. He could hardly look at me because he was on his cell phone all the time, twittering, And everybody, if I have lunch with somebody, they want to take selfies, and they post them. It's like a whole new world out there. So I eventually decided, well, I had to do this too because I was getting a lot of requests from fans to sign things, And so I put up Terror Time, and what happened there was that because of my name, thank goodness, I drew an initial audience, and I've always liked horror art. So I started encouraging the artist. Some artists would post a drawing of a character from Fright Night, and I'd say great, and if it wasn't so great, I would say nothing. But anyway, what happened is that people who were artists and who liked horror, they started posting their drawings and their paintings on Terror Time. And so, because it was changed, this was nothing that I did, by the way. It just grew this way. But because there was new content coming on 3 or 4 times a day, that Facebook page started to grow. And then when that happened, I opened the website, to take care of autographing things. Does all this make sense?
Oh yeah, I'm looking here now. You've got the Howling.
You've got an amazing Facebook page, by the way, with Terror Time.
Thank you. But that was because the original growth was organic, and then I realized that anything I write, and I've got 4 short stories on there, and then and I have my Twisted Tales, and I wanted to hang those somewhere on the web, and I was talking to people like Adam Green, and they told me, well, if you really want to have any control over it, you have to do it through your own website. And so we're building the website out right now, and in a couple of weeks I think we go live with a much more sophisticated website, and I'm going to put my Twisted Tales up for download at 99 cents a piece. It's not because I'm making any money, but I'm trying to defray the cost. But what's interesting is that it's been gaining a viewership, I guess you'd say.
That's the wonderful thing about horror fans, is they're so dedicated.
Well, that's what's amazing. We're in a time, Doc, where the fans, the genre fans, are exploding. I mean, that's new. That wasn't here 10 years ago. I mean, it really wasn't. Now I'm doing my first convention. I'm doing my second convention in my lifetime. I did one 8 years ago, and on Thursday I'm flying into Chicago to do Wizard World because they have the Bruce Campbell festival, film festival, and they're running Fright Night, and I'm going to do a Q&A. It's really why I'm going. But they tell me they're going to have 80 to 100,000 people there.
Yeah, the Wizard World is a big event.
Yeah, well, I mean, 10 years ago you didn't have that going on. And you just said you have a horror convention up there in Ontario?
Doc, you have one up there?
What's that?
Horror convention.
I believe Sudbury has like a Comic-Con type horror con in August. I'm not positive on that.
Okay, well, see, that's what I mean.
I know Toronto has them, though.
Okay, but I mean, that's what I mean. It's the horror conventions seem to be going on now, more of them all over the world, and horror film festivals. I mean, I'm very lucky, but I was just invited to Germany. I had one, believe it or not, that invited me to Serbia. I mean, I can't, and I get invitations here in America all the time, but I mean, I hardly ever go. But I mean, that audience wasn't there, and I don't know how to measure how big the horror audience may be because it's growing all the time.
Yeah, we've got an event here coming up next weekend, which will be the 5th Crypticon here in Kansas City, and it's just grown by leaps and bounds with each event each year.
Well, that's why you're doing this podcast, because there's an audience there, and I don't know. It's got to be millions of people, but I don't know how big it can be, but it could be. But it's certainly bigger than I ever thought.
Well, you've got the conventions that, all these people show up at. Then you have the collecting side of it. All the horror collectibles and autograph stuff that you can get your hands on. There's giant groups out there online with thousands of people that just collect. It's a constant going thing.
Okay, well, that's what got me doing this, Doc, because I had so many requests for autographs to sign, for signed Blu-rays, essentially. And then what they'd do is they'd send one to me, and of course they wouldn't include a self-addressed return envelope, So I thought, well, I better open up a website and get, because this is too too much work and too expensive to do it any other way. But yeah, so the whole genre is exploding. Is my impression.
Now, to back up here into the genre and horror films itself, I want to talk a little bit about what I consider one of the greatest vampire movies from the 1980s, Fright Night.
Well, thank you again. Yes, I'm thrilled with that. I don't know how to explain that, and I'm thrilled. It's become loved by multiple generations. I can't explain it, but it was like parents would watch it with their children, and now grandparents are watching it
with my kids.
Yeah, grandparents are watching it with their grandchildren, and so it's become it's a modern classic. Thank God, I'll be thankful forever, and it couldn't have been more unexpected. But I'll tell you that it's been growing. It's been growing since it came out, and there's some. I think I know what it is, but the movie engenders huge affection. You know, I think because it's good natured. You know.
Yeah, I know. It's like I said, it's one of my favorites from the '80s. And the film holds up still, very well today. We're actually going to have Chris Sarandon here next weekend at Crypticon, so I'm excited about getting an autograph from him.
Well, when you do, tell him you talk to me on the podcast, and I send him my love.
I will definitely do that. What was you going to say, Doc?
He's a great man, and he's a great actor. He's a terrific guy.
I was just going to ask him, being the director of the original, what he felt like, or any major differences, or how he felt about the 2011 remake of Fright Night.
Well, you'd have to ask him.
No, I was meaning, as you being the director of the original, how did you
feel
about
me? How do I feel about it? I thought they did a very good job. I mean, I thought it was a very good movie on every level. I didn't feel it was really Fright Night. You know, I mean, it's hard to describe. Fright Night, the original, works because it has heart, and it has a harm and humor. And, those things didn't work as well in the remake as they might have. But that's the reason one of the reasons that people love Fright Night is Roddy McDowall.
Yeah.
I thought they made a huge mistake by screwing around with the character of Peter Vincent. So, but I don't like to criticize anybody else's work. And it was a very, very good movie, It didn't have Peter Vincent, It's a terrible mistake.
Just a few days ago, I set up a projector outside, and Ted came over, and we sat out there and watched Fright Night.
Yeah. That's great.
That was our homework, man.
What did you do? You projected it on a wall or what?
Yeah, I've got a couple of different sized canvases that I hang up outside and project onto that.
Oh, boy. Okay.
It was fun.
Well, that would be fun.
I spent a lot of time as a kid growing up, going to the drive-in, going to the movie theater, seeing all kinds of stuff. And so that's the kind of experience I like to have with my kids. We don't go to the movies as much, but we can have it, right here outside at home. So that they've got to see all kinds of movies that I've seen on the big screen, here at home on the big screen.
That's just great. Your kids will remember that forever.
I did have one question.
Some they enjoy, some they don't.
I did have one question. I'm just not sure if you're able to actually speak about it or not. But, I mean, there's a lot of buzz, and if we can, I'd like to get it confirmed on this show. Is there any chance that you are actually going to direct Fresh Blood?
Well, let's see how the script turns out, because we're in the process of writing that right now. And I'm collaborating with Juan in Spain. And we're over 36 pages now, and it feels pretty good. So let's see how the screenplay turns out when we get finished with it.
Oh, that alone in itself is great news, because I got to say, sir, if anybody's going to do a vampire movie, it should be you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait. That has me excited. I hope that does come to
yeah. Like I said, I've been sitting on that, just waiting. It was what I had to ask. 'Cause, yeah.
Well, Juan's got his first movie out now that was made from one of his books, and it's called Annihilation or Extinction. Which one?
Extinction.
It's right out there now on VOD.
I think it's Extinction.
Extinction? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's Extinction. Mm-hmm. So he's doing well. And it looks like a very good movie.
It was a good movie, actually.
Oh, you've already watched it?
Yeah, it was pretty good, man. It was pretty good. I liked it.
Oh.
I liked it a lot.
Okay. Well, he's talented.
Another
as a
great
writer.
classic that
Go ahead.
I was going to say another great classic that you're attached to as director, and one of my all-time favorite films is Child's Play.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Who thought that I was creating Chucky the Killer Doll? I never thought it would go on for 30 years. That's
I
another
gotta
one.
ask, where did the inspiration come from to take a talking doll and make it an evil character? I mean, it worked epically. One of the most iconic characters is Chucky, but I gotta know where the inspiration for that idea came from.
I don't know if you'll remember this, if you've seen it. Anybody remember Trilogy of Terror?
Yes.
Yes.
A TV movie from 1968?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well that it's an anthology, and one of the episodes is called Prey with Karen Black, and it's about a Zumi doll, and it comes alive in her apartment and spends the half hour or 40 minutes trying to kill her with a spear, and it's about 6 inches tall. Do you remember seeing it at all?
Yeah, I have, but it's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay,
I remember
look at
watching
it
the show
again.
with my mom back when I was young.
Okay, look at it again. The stories were written by Richard Matheson, who was a genius. And Richard Matheson wrote I Am Legend, among the Incredible Shrinking Man, a lot of stuff. So he wrote the episode Prey. And Dan Curtis, who directed it and produced it, he took a 16-millimeter camera and put it on roller skates. So it was just, about 6 inches off the floor. And he used that as the moving POV of the killer doll. And the doll was only about 6 inches big. But he chased Karen Black around that apartment with that point of view, wide-angle lens, close to the floor. And it was scary as hell. And because I'd seen that, I knew that when I got in trouble with Chucky, I could cut to Chucky's point of view. So I knew that any action sequence that I filmed with Chucky, if I cut to what he was seeing when he was chasing somebody, I'd have a dynamite film. So visually, that made me... Are you there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, that gave me heart to try it technically. And why a doll? The doll was because at that moment in time, they had something called the Buddy doll, which had just came out. My Buddy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my buddy.
And
I remember that.
you remember that? Okay, they put a computer chip in that doll. And so you never knew what that doll was going to say, because it could come out with any number of different sentences, And so it made the doll seem more lifelike. And it also meant that the doll could say things to a little boy, and the babysitter might not believe him, but the doll could come out and say some very weird thing. In other words, the doll was getting closer to being alive as an animatronic, robot or whatever. They were getting spookier at that moment in time. And also there was a human baby they came out with as a toy that was full size, like about 4 to 6 months. And it was creepy as hell. So
I remember that. It was, too.
Pardon me?
I said, I remember that doll, and it was creepy.
Yeah, so what you had was, I just saw all kinds of visual possibilities with it. And when I fell on the idea of having Charles Lee Ray and having a serial killer possess a child's toy, I know that sounds crazy, but when I had the idea, I knew I had a very, very strong story. And now, fellas, I have to say thank you very much, and I've got to go.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a
total
pleasure.
honor. I mean, total honor, and we thank you for the privilege and taking the time to do this for us. Truly, from the bottom of our hearts, you are a legend. And as a closer, I do believe you're also going to be part of the Legends issue, are you not, coming up in Malevolent Magazine?
I think I can't keep everything straight, but that sounds good.
Well, I'm sure you keep plenty busy, and we'll be sitting back on the side and looking forward to see what you do next.
Oh,
Well, I wish you-
definitely can't wait.
Well, I wish you, Doc, and Pedro and Wayne, I wish you all the best of luck up there in Ontario and in Kansas City. And the last couple of weeks of summer, let's all enjoy them and watch a few horror films.
We most definitely will. You have yourself a good night, Tom, and thanks again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
You have a great night. Thank you. And that was Mr. Tom Holland, and you heard it from the man himself, folks. There is your finish out the summer orders. Horror, horror, and more horror. And if you think we're done with you yet, oh yeah, if you think we're done with you tonight, you got another thing coming. This is only the beginning. We're going to take a quick musical break, and we'll be back with another amazing guest here on Tales of the Unknown.